Have you ever asked yourself how you can create more depth in your mix so every instrument has its own space, but it still sounds together and sounds like a whole piece of music? If yes, I have some simple reverb tricks for you today, so let's jump in. Hey friends, Ivano here from ruffinstudio.com. In this video I'm going to show you how I use reverbs to create different spaces for different instruments, but how we still can keep the mix together as a whole part. I also talk about a little bit more about the mindset on reverbs, so let's jump in with step number one. First we need to think about the foundation of the reverb, right? So how actually do we want to add reverb to our mixes, right? And the reason why is, first of all, I want to have the track sound more natural, right? So on this particular recording from this video, you hear probably a lot of room sound, because our ears get really used to the reverb because we hear it every day, everywhere, right? So for example, a good example here, if you call your friend and he's sitting on the toilet, you instantly know through the phone that he's probably sitting on the toilet, because it has a lot of reverb in the toilet, right? Because of the walls and the floor, and your brain instantly recognizes it, right? And we need to be aware of this so we can work with that mindset a little bit in our own mixes. Because what we actually want to do is not add a tons of reverb, but we want to add a little bit here and there, so we don't hear it but we feel it, right? And another thing why we want to create or add reverbs is to add more excitement to the track, so it doesn't sound dry or unnatural or boring. And another thing why we want to add reverb is to add more depth, right? To create more space, that not everything is sitting right in front of the speaker. We could also think about it like we want to create different spaces for the important things, like the clap, for example. We want it to have it right in the front because it's so important. It drives the groove and it adds some kind of satisfaction to a drum loop and pattern. And for example, longer hold notes like pads or maybe atmospheric stuff, we don't want to have it right in front of it, because that's where the drum should play, right? So we can make it a bit further back with bigger reverbs, but I talk about this in the next point, so let's go further. Second thing is, I like to think about reverb in different sizes, right? So I use in general a small reverb, a mid-sized and a large reverb. There are some people who use only a small one and a large one. There are some people who use only one reverb, which also is okay. But I just get used to use 3 different reverbs, and I always have them ready to go in my template. So as I mentioned before, for the important stuff, I want to have it to sit it right in the front, right? And that's why I use the small reverb for. Small reverb is for drums, for the important things, right? Then the mid-sized is maybe for percussion, maybe some, I don't know, effects, transition sounds maybe even. And the large reverb is for some sound pads, maybe some synthesizers that have longer hold notes, so we can actually create different spaces. So we have the drums here, then we have maybe percussion a little bit behind it, and then at the very back we have the pad sounds, whatever, FX, atmospheric sounds. So now let's talk about the two most important settings. So in my opinion, the two most important settings are the pre-delay and the decay. The pre-delay is actually there to make the reverb start a little bit later, right? So let's make an example here with the snare. So the reason why we want to have it a little bit delayed is that the reverb doesn't fuck up our transients, right? So we lose punch. So for example, let's make it a little bit louder. So the reverb gets triggered right together with the clap, or with the snare in this case. So we want to delay it a little bit. So that the transient stays there. Of course, this is way too much reverb in my opinion. Yeah, that's it for the pre-delay. That's the reason why we want to have it a little bit between 20 milliseconds and 40 milliseconds is a good rule of thumb to start with. I like to time it to the beats. Something like that. And then we have the decay time, right? This is actually something similar like the release time on an amp envelope, right? So it's basically just how fast the reverb tail fades out, so we can't hear it anymore. And there are some school of thoughts. Maybe, for example, we could make it as long as the next clap or snare drum hits, right? So we just, the reverb tail goes until the next clap hits. But yeah, I don't care too much about this. I just make it by ear, but you can totally create some kind of breathiness and fill the groove up a little. So what I also would do is I would just choose some presets, right? Some small reverbs like drum room, whatever. For example, in my case, I've chosen tight drums for the small reverb. I basically send all my drums, hi-hats, snare, whatever, to the small reverb, and then some mid-sized reverbs, and then a large one. It's often large dark vocal. And yeah, I would recommend you just choose some presets and then go from there. It's really good starting points. Now let's do some audio examples finally. So the question is, how do we work with those different reverbs, right? So for example, the question that maybe pops up is, how much reverb can I add? And I like to, for the important stuff, I like to just add some kind of a bubble around it, and I show you quickly how I would do that. This is a dry signal, right? I bring it in until I barely hear it. And then I bring it even a tiny little bit further back. So I bring it up until I can hear it a little bit, and then I dial it back. Listen again. So this is the reverb. Maybe dial it a little bit back. Something like this. And now let's have a listen without. Ooh, some excitement. So we created a little bubble around it, and as I mentioned before, I want to add things that I can feel but not hear. I mean, I can't barely hear that reverb, but if it's gone, something is missing. My brain tells me, goddamn, what's happening? Listen again. It's fun, right? Really dry. And just by doing this here and there, we can create some excitement. Let's have a listen to the drums only. Without reverb. Let's get it back in. And can you tell, if you would listen with closed eyes, what happened? I mean, if you wouldn't watch this whole tutorial now, and I would just come up to you and ask you, can you have a listen to this and then tell me what happened here? If I just turn off the reverb, but I wouldn't tell it that it's the reverb, of course. Maybe you could, maybe not, and that's what I want. Because we want to have it a little bit not so obvious, right? We can tell something happened, something goes away, but we can't instantly tell that it's maybe the reverb. Maybe we can, I don't know, but I can. This is just a drum group, right? So let's move on. Let's just have a listen through the whole track and mute all the reverbs. Okay, so I'm going on and muting now the reverbs. 3, 2, 1. Bring it back again. No reverb. With reverb. Just waiting for the break. Reverb is still in it. In. Yeah, that's it. I guess it's really subtle, but that's what we want. But we still created some space. Yeah, one little thing which is really important in my opinion and can add really some glue is the EQ. So we can EQ the reverb, right? For example, on the snare or clap, it works great. We're cutting on the tops. We can really make the reverb sound darker, right? So if you want a dark sounding track, dark sounding vibe to your track, just cut on the reverb. So here's an example. Just on the snare drum. Can you hear that? Sounds more tighter and together. It melts together the reverb with the snare drum a little bit better. If I just cut like this, and also bottom end. Because I don't want to mess around with the low end, right? The reverb with the low ends. It sounds brighter, right? If I take out the EQ. That's because I cut around 5K, right? But I like it more with the cut, adding a little bit darker vibe, even if it's kind of a happy track. And I also feel it tightens the stuff a little bit better together, or glues it a little bit better together. Here's nice and tight. Here's just a little bit open end. But if you like that, it's fine. You don't need to EQ that, right? Let's check what I did here. Large reverb. Take it out. Without EQ, I think it lost itself a little bit, and with the EQ it sounds more like a package. But it's a detail, you know, but I like details. So let's back it up again. So yeah, that's it. Let's listen again in context without reverb. Could you hear how this pad? I had the feeling this came out way too much. That's why I turned it down a little bit more. But I didn't realize that the reverbs were turned off, and I had the feeling it sits too far in the front. But with the reverb on, it moves back, and also the volume of it just sits better in the mix, in my opinion. So let's focus on this one. The reverb. Back in. Yeah, it's a really small change, but I have the feeling it fits better into the mix a tiny little bit better. Yeah, it's a lot of detail, I know, but yeah, let's have a listen again. Small detail, but that's a good example actually. how you can really add some spaces and yeah, a little bit harmony with all the elements together, just using reverb, small, mid-sized and a large reverb, sending different things to different reverbs, using EQ. Yeah, that's it. So I sum it up again for you quickly. Let's check the notes. Yeah, we can use reverbs to add some depth, some excitement, as we could hear. Also, we can make it sound more natural to our ears, because our minds quickly recognizes if something is wrong with the room or whatever, because we hear it from birth on every time, the room, how it sounds. And second thing, put them into different spaces, right, with different sizes. So drums, small reverb, mid-sized reverbs for the things that you want sit in between the sound pad and the drums, like this, right? And yeah, like a sandwich, the burger. And third thing is using EQ to glue it a little bit better together, to make it sit in the mix a little bit better. And yeah, just think about which one is the important thing, which one do I want to really hear in the front, in the face, which one isn't not so important, should play in the background. And yeah, dial in as much as you can hear it, and then back it a little bit back in volume, so you can feel it but not hear it when it goes away, when you turn it off. Right. So yeah, that's it. I hope this helps, and as always, I have still my 7-step low end checklist ready for you. Whenever you're stuck with mixing low end, you know that kick and the bass relationship, common problem. I have laid out a little 7-step ebook. Yeah, it's a long file actually, but it can work great as a reference file whenever you're stuck with mixing low end. Just pull it up and see where you need help with. And yeah, just go and download it. I added in the description and also in the comment section. So it's for free, of course. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your time. Means a lot. Hope you enjoy it. Cheers.